back to this week's episode of the College Lifter Show. I'm your host, Will Everill, here with Kara and Ryan, full team. So, we are back. This week we're going to talk about prepping for competition because Open's coming up. There are a lot of mini competitions for people who aren't going to regionals right after that. So, we're going to cover the points of your prep, your nutrition, your programming, game plan, mindset, and when is the right time to start. So, Ryan, Mr. Coach over here, prep. How do you prep your athletes for going into something, let's say, just as kind of common as the Open?
Biggest thing for prep to me is just making sure that all your bases are covered, right? And for a sport that's as crazy and wide range as CrossFit, that's one of the hardest things is making sure all the bases are covered. Luckily, you go to a good website like Garage Games. They'll almost always tell you all the movements you're going to do in your class. So all you got to do is just go through those movements, that list of movements, make sure you're fairly proficient on all of them, and then that's really a great place to start as far as preparation, is just making sure I can do all the movements. I'm going to be able to do the weights that they have listed, and if they give you the workouts before time, do the workouts. That's the best way to prep, is to actually do it.
So you do recommend actually practicing the actual workout you're going to do? Okay.
Absolutely. Why not? You're going to be familiar with it. You're going to know what parts suck the most. You're going to know what parts you got to kind of power through. That's the biggest thing, is just, it's just like anything we talk about in weightlifting, where if you suck at something, spend more time there.
Right.
It's the same thing. If I got to do a workout in a competition where I got a million handstand push-ups and I suck at handstand push-ups, well, that's probably something I need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you learned a little bit about that. You learned to sprint for the first time a couple weeks ago, and then...
So we had to bring that one up?
Yeah, this early. Just get it over with.
The whole reason I'm not doing the competition in a few weeks that I was originally signed up for?
Yes.
Yeah. So the other part of that is be smart about it, because I was not, essentially.
Yeah.
What happened.
You're going to learn to sprint warm up. Anyways.
Yeah, there's definitely a build-up into anything like that. You don't want to jump head in the water.
So if there's something you've never done, so let's say the athlete comes in and it's like someone you mentioned earlier who they've never snatched before.
Yeah.
How much volume do you recommend throwing into that new item?
I think that's a loaded question. It depends on what kind of time do we have. If it, like, say we got them, like in my case in this story I told, where we had 5 minutes before the event, where you had to learn how to snatch 95 pounds in 5 minutes. You've never done anything like that. Well, you got to kind of just bite the bullet, teach a few basics, and roll with it. But if we got
you got a month. Let's say you got a
month pretty snatch. If let's say we're just trying to snatch, I don't know, 95, 135, somewhere in there. I'm gonna work on that in almost all the days of the week. Up until then, I'd say 5 or 6 days a week, even if it's just the barbell working technique, hitting those positions, working those movements. If it's like 3 months out, 3, 4, 5 months out, you got more time. Now you're able to actually spend time building strength for that movement. A month, you just got to learn the movement.
Yeah.
A few months, now you can build strength. Now you can build actual proficiency. Now you're able to, now you have a chance to beat some people.
Gotcha.
So this is why we do this. Not
yes.
really, it's to have fun.
That ties into programming. So when you program for your athletes, obviously you're going to practice the movements. But what else are you going to throw in there? Are you going to throw in a lot of strength stuff, getting closer to it, or are you going to back that off?
Yeah. So like with my main weightlifting athlete, one thing that we do a lot of is I'm a fan of a short taper, meaning that we're going to lift really heavy all the way up to the week of the competition, and then that doesn't mean we're not lifting heavy anymore. Mm-hmm. We're just going to pull back a little bit of the volume instead of, like, say, working up to some heavy weights and hitting them for a lot of sets. We'll probably just work up to a heavy weight and be done. And by heavy weight, I mean like your opener, right? Which in like Brandon's case is a fairly, that's roughly 85% for him is usually his openers. So yeah, during that week we're usually squatting heavy, but at the end of the day, everybody's different. Like you may not be able to handle that. Your body may not like squatting heavy 2 days before the meet.
Probably not.
Like Brandon's going to squat heavy the day before the meet.
Right.
It may just be to 1 rep, but his body needs that because it all depends on the training that you build in. A lot of people think that your body just likes it one way. I think you build your body into that way. So like if you just say we train you, you got 12 weeks before this competition. Well, in week 1 through week 11, we built up to, where you started lifting heavy just 3 or 4 times a week. Let's just say squatting 3 or 4 times a week, snatching heavy maybe twice a week, and clean jerking heavy those same days. And then we built you by week 11. Now you're clean and jerking and snatching heavy 5 days a week and squatting heavy 6 to 7 days a week. Well, now it's a completely different ball game. Now your body's more prepared, and your body is expecting to lift heavy that next day, right? So, and if you drop off, now you've completely disrupted your whole neurological pattern your body has for every day, and now you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think the other side of the coin, as far as like programming and prepping and all that stuff, is what level you're really at. Because if you're a very novice CrossFitter and you're starting to look at, I think the mistake made there very often is, okay, how are the top athletes training? Guys, you're not the top athlete. You can't look at that. What they're doing is, okay, this is the movement I'm really weak in. That's the movement I'm going to train. But for somebody at my level, there's so many holes in my game, I can't look at one single movement because I might get a little bit better there. The thing to remember is the whole range of movements that you want to get better at isn't going to happen. So what you need to be focusing on more is what is your weakest entire portion of your body. For me, that's upper body, and how I've been training that is a pull-up and handstand push-up program because I can do those. And so then every single lift that's surrounding that upper body is getting stronger. Yeah. And especially because up until probably about a month out is when you start finding where the programming is and what the specific workouts you're going to do are. If it's the open, even less. But you can still know and research what the normal movements are, what the weight ranges are for those movements in your, it's not weight class. Division, thank you. We've been talking about weightlifting a lot. So you can still know where those are and know where you're trying to like build to, but you need to acknowledge that you're weaker in a certain area as a whole and work on that area individually, not the specific movements. If it's that far from competition, you don't know exactly what you're preparing for.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, especially for like something like the Open. It's really important to think about what you're bad at. The Open does a great job of hitting such a wide range of things. They'll have one workout where you're going to lift heavy. They're going to have some where you're upside down. They're going to have some where you're doing pull-ups. They're going to hit a really good range. So yeah, that's absolutely right. Is finding not only your weaknesses but grouping your weaknesses. And here's a great tip for anybody that just does CrossFit classes that's not necessarily training on their own. Or at a gym, it doesn't matter. But if you're just the kind of person that you just attend your classes every day, and you want to work on those weaknesses, I don't think I've ever been to a gym where a coach would have a problem with you hanging out for 15 minutes after your WOD and working on a skill or something, or even less helping you work on a skill. So that's a great thing to do. Is like you said, group those weaknesses together, even write them down. And then just schedule them out through the week. So, like, if I know I suck at handstand push-ups, I suck at double unders, I suck at pull-ups, just to say you're terrible at gymnastics altogether like that. And those are my 3 big weaknesses, and I'm certain I'm going to see them in the Open. Well, I'm going to say, when I train on Monday, I'm going to practice my double unders afterwards. When I train on Tuesday, I'm going to practice my handstand push-ups. Yeah. And then when I train on Wednesday, I'm going to practice my pull-ups, and then I'm just going to cycle that through for the next 3 days and then rest on Sunday, whatever that may be. So, yeah, definitely grouping like that and getting a game plan is huge. So, yeah,
and your coach is probably going to be hanging out afterwards anyways, and he'll probably just help you out. Now, moving into the CrossFit thing, so how, in my mind, I would taper, so if we're coming up to a CrossFit competition and we're going to taper, I would taper more Metcon stuff than lifting. Would you agree with that?
So now we're getting into crazy stuff talking about the CrossFit program. So this is one of those things. I'm huge on that. Weightlifting or powerlifting or whatever it may be has to be kind of built for that specific person. Right. I think CrossFit's even more so in that category because, like we just talked about, there's so many things you got to look at and so many weaknesses you may have. So it is kind of crazy, but
from an energy system component, would you taper off more of that kind of glycolytic stuff more than the strength? Because that's what I'm thinking.
Do what?
I would say so.
the like 5-7 minute WODs, taper that back a little bit more than you would like heavy lifting.
So wait, are you saying do fewer Metcons or the weight you're using?
So not the super intense short ones. Yeah. So not like we're not going to do Fran a couple days before.
Jeez.
Yeah. So we'll definitely do say we're 3 days out from the meet and you're doing your last WOD before the meet. Probably a good idea. Maybe some maybe a row, maybe like a longer row in there, paired with some lighter handstand push-ups. Is that something you're into? If that's something you're good at, I would definitely. That's the time I'm going to do something I'm really good at. It's one, going to build my confidence, and two, it's just going to be a light, easy day for me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So moving on to game plan and mindset. This is one that we're probably going to spend most of the time on.
Mm.
Where the biggest thing is, for most people, it's not that big of a deal.
Or it shouldn't be.
Or it shouldn't be. Whether it's the open, whether it's a local comp, whether it's weightlifting. We're not professionals for the most part. Like, we're not going to get paid for this. It's not something to just go crazy about and freak out about.
It can be the goal, but you need to be very realistic about where you are at the moment. And the great thing about the open is that, yes, you're going to be compared to a lot of other people, and that by itself pushes me a ton, just knowing that my score is going to be up there next to everybody. Mm-hmm. But it's a good time to see where you are at as an athlete and to be able to use that to progress the next year into the next one. Whereas I see in actual competitions a little bit differently in that mindset, where you really are competing against everybody else. But the open, I feel, is more beneficial for yourself, especially if you're not going to regionals or games.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that's a great point. It's just constantly trying to better yourself, not get and I tell people all the time, like whenever we're just writing our scores on the board at the end of the workout, this is exactly how I put it every time I'm introducing somebody to that idea of writing your score down. You can put it up here and compete, and that's great. A lot of people like to compete. That's an awesome thing. I like to compete. I'm a very competitive person. But more so, it's you, let's say in the case of a board, writing it up there, or in the case of a competition, showing up and doing it, saying, I've worked my ass off. I'm doing this because I've worked hard, and I'm proud of it. And you should be proud, because there's millions of other people sitting on the couch not doing anything, and you're out there busting your tail. So yeah, that's how I see it. That's a great point, and definitely just just doing it just to do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the other big difference between the open and actual competition, the open spread across 5 weeks, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's one each week, so you have some rest time in between. If you didn't do that great on one event, you have time to get your mind back right before you do the next one. Versus the competition, it's all happening in a short span of time. You need to know what kind of athlete you are. You need to know, are you the type of person that thrives under pressure or kind of shrinks back a little bit? And if you shrink back, that's fine. Just know that's something you're going to have to deal with. If you have that one really bad event, because if you compete, especially multiple times, it's going to happen. Something's going to go wrong. You have to know how to recover from that.
Yeah. So how do you recover from that mentally? How do you come back from missing a lift or just taking laying an egg on a workout?
Man, if there was a question that was based on personality types, that's it.
Yeah.
There's no one answer to that one. Like to some people that are very relaxed, you can just say, well, why did it bother you? And then there's people that in their mind this is life or death, and they just embarrass their whole family. And,
family names.
Yeah, and you can't just say that to that person because they'll probably kill you. So that's super based on personality, but overall, it's just having that sportsmanship within yourself to yourself, and realizing that there's always going to be another chance.
Yeah.
And every failure is a chance to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So just like I missed a lift in a weightlifting meet, whenever you go back to your warm-up room, you talk to your coach, find out what you did, that's what you're thinking about next time you get on platform.
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit's a little bit different because you're probably not going to do the same movement within a competition.
Yeah.
But it's a future chance, It's a chance to learn in the future and do something better in the future. If you tripped up 100 times trying to do double unders, then, okay, I know what I got to work on now. And that's probably what I hear most doing CrossFit competitions afterwards. Everybody always talks about, okay, now I know what I need to work on.
Yeah.
So most of the time, I would say more so than most other sports, the attitude like after losing or something like that is really good at CrossFit. Mm-hmm. People understanding what they need to work on.
Now, would you say doing that in front of people kind of forces it? Because you could see it in the gym every day and be like, oh, it was just because of X, Y, and Z that I did before. Mm-hmm. But doing it in front of people and failing in front of people kind of makes it more real to, oh, this is something I really need to hit.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. And I think the atmosphere really helps too. If people, talking about people being there, you got all those people sitting there cheering you on and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's something that's going to help you do better, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd like to, since we're talking about that and talking about, making those mistakes, let's talk about how to not make mistakes. How do you game plan to keep from making those mistakes? I know for a lot of people a lot of people don't like the game plan. I don't think everybody has to, but I think it is something that most people, especially when you're starting out, that you have to do is be able to look at the workout and say, okay, I need to start out slow in this part. I need to take a little bit longer rest when I'm transitioning between these two movements.
Mm-hmm.
I need to tighten up my wrist wraps before I do. Those little things, it all adds up.
Yeah. And that could also be a mental break where, like, you almost separate yourself from the whole workout where it's like, all right, just tighten them up. Nothing else exists. All right, now it exists.
Or chuck
again.
up. Everybody's chuck up.
Yeah.
Need a break, chuck up.
Break.
Yeah, because we've all seen it 100 times. Somebody jumps into a workout, they didn't pace it, they didn't do anything, and they redline 2 minutes in, and then they're done. You do that, you do that in a competition, and you just cost you or your team that event.
You did.
So I think game planning is huge. What do you guys? How do you game plan?
I'm not that good at it, as she knows, because we've done partner workouts, and I've gone too hot out the gate and just died.
It's true. But I almost tend to pace too much to where I heard this somewhere, and I think it's a great ideal. So the majority of the workout, you're going about 80%. That last 1-2 minutes, you can use everything you have in the reserve tank and just go sprint to the finish. And I'm really bad at kicking on that power at the last minute. I still stay at that same pace. So I need to kind of work at gearing up after I've reserved a little bit from pacing.
I think for me, probably something that has helped lately is just not... I've always had the mentality, because I play kind of faster sports, that if you don't start first, you're never going to win. If you're not off the line first, but to kind of be comfortable with, all right, sitting back, pacing it, third person back, that's where I'm comfortable being, and then being able to drop it into that gear and take off.
Yeah.
That's just kind of talking to yourself and kind of having that mentality you hear Rich talk about early on, is where he was like, I just don't want to be last.
Yeah. No, I really like that. And one thing that I say a lot, I tell people a lot, is feel the first round. And I say that a lot. So like say we're doing a workout that, it can be an AMRAP or rounds for time or whatever it may be. But I always say feel the first round, meaning just take your time, just go kind of slow and get through that first round. Talking about Rich, like you watch him, he's almost always last in the beginning.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't say last, middle of the pack near the beginning of the workouts, but he's, usually right there near the top spot at the end because he, in my mind, I don't know if he actually does, but it looks like to me like he kind of feels it out. And even though he's done all these movements a million times, he knows what it's like. He knows he can look at the workout and know exactly what it's going to feel like. He still feels it, finds his pace, and then rolls with it. And I think that's a huge thing for a lot of people to learn, especially starting out, is feel that first round. Because especially if you're inexperienced, you're not going to be able to look, as well as somebody who is experienced, you're not going to be able to look at the workout so well and say, okay, well, I understand how this is going to happen and how I'm going to feel at this point. And by the fifth round, I'm probably going to be pretty smoked right here. So feel it.
And I think that comes even more into more importance where you have competition like just a local CrossFit comp where you have multiple workouts in that day. And most people aren't used to that. So maybe you know how it feels to do that one workout. You don't know how it feels to do it after those 5 other things you had to do earlier this morning. So feeling out that first round might really save you.
And on that note, something that you hear pretty much everything says, but it bears repeating. Your first competition, unless you're a super just amazing athlete, scaled. Just do scale, because you don't know how you react. You don't know how it's going to feel to your body to do all those in one day. You might not know completely how you are as an athlete, how you react to different situations, and how you come back from things mentally. That first competition is really your practice round. How you know where to base everywhere else. Yeah,
I love scaled. I love competing scaled because it's so much fun because it's like it's nowhere near as much pressure. It's and that's a great point too. Is just do scaled just because it's not going to be as much pressure. Just jump in and just have fun. And that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you screw up something, don't feel bad. Like we keep going back to Rich, but in his last games as an individual. On that run, he'd been working on running and swimming, and he got toasted. He had to walk. So, I mean, it happens to everyone.
He switched to swimming, then he had forgotten about the running. But, I mean, that just goes back to knowing how you kind of for me, if I really, really screw up a workout, there's only one that I can think of that I was, literally crying in the middle of the workout. And it was just really bad because I was, super disappointed with, how I was doing. It was just bad. But for me, I just had to kind of go run a 400-meter by myself and just recenter myself. There was one girl I saw at Beach Brawl actually. So I was judging the RX women, and the one event with what are they called? I'm losing it. Muscle ups. Only had 5, but that was a real roadblock for most of the girls, and they knew that. But this one girl, I guess she had him or something, because it just wasn't happening that day. She hit like 1, and then she failed out every single other one.
Wow.
And I think it was probably because she was putting too much pressure on herself, trying to go back to it too fast, which is another thing. Give yourself time to rest, even if it's a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just trying to go back to it too fast, and it wasn't happening. And she was literally like, she lost it. She was crying. I was over here watching. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm really kind of concerned for her the rest of the day, because this was the first event, and they're pretty like go go go. And I was like, man, I'm a little bit worried for her after this. But then I saw her in the next event. She was laughing. She was having a good time. You know, it was like it hadn't even happened.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
We touched on it a little bit when we talked about mindset and everything. But there's such thing as peak performance and flow state whenever everything's moving the way it's supposed to. And I think we've all experienced this in sports or in WOD. Whenever everything just happens, it just looks like it's supposed to, and it doesn't. It's not an accident. It happened because you put all the pieces in place like they needed to be.
Yeah.
And like in that case, she probably, on those other workouts had great workouts because she put her, obviously when she puts a lot of pressure on herself and got super intense, that wasn't what put her in peak performance. So it's not what put her in flow state. That's the opposite. So I'm sure that kind of person, and we're all different, had a great workout once she got relaxed. I'm the opposite. I have to have that pressure. I have to feel, super intense, and like if I don't do my best, we're all going to lose. And so everybody's different.
I know that's you too.
That is, but I'm also aware, like, and I heard this forever ago. I forget where. I think it was probably in basketball. You practice, focus on every little movement in practice, and then when it's game time, forget it.
Yeah.
Just let it happen. Let that flow state happen. And for me, that pressure kind of helps me almost just let it happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same with you, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I definitely, when everything's on the line, I feel like I perform my best.
Yeah.
And some people just aren't like that. And that's fine. Everybody's different, If you can win in every game in the regular season, there's no reason that, if you're just not great in the postseason, that's what you got teammates for.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're the Cowboys. I did that in there. So, with all that said, when should you start doing a competition? When should your first one be? Should it be like a year into CrossFit, like 6 months, like 8 years?
Whenever you're ready.
But you'll never be ready until your 4th one.
4th year?
4th competition.
Oh, well then you got to build up. For me, I think it's more of an issue of you need to do some research. You need to know what weights they're working at. And that's what I did at first. I was trying to look and see, like, okay, I know I'm competing scale. What weight should I be looking to proficiently hit on a day-to-day basis in my gym? Figured out where those were. Once I started hitting them pretty regularly in the gym without an issue, then I started to think about competing. Because there's no point doing it if you can't finish the workouts.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I agree with that. I think CrossFit's kind of different than like a platform sport like weightlifting or powerlifting. Those as soon as you can. There's no this is when you should do it. But I think CrossFit, exactly like you said, whenever you feel confident in those movements, which I'll come back to that, but whenever you feel like you can do those movements and those weights, that's the time.
Yeah.
And I guess what I got hung up on there was, when is good enough, when is proficient enough. But like you obviously set a point in your head that once I can, if it was like you had to do a 125 pound clean. Obviously you got to the point where you're like, okay, when I can do this a handful of times and it doesn't scare me when I go to do it, I feel proficient. So yeah, I think that's good. And I think always look for competitions. So like, once every couple weeks, go on the garage games, look up, when the next competition is coming up. And, I think one of the best things you can do to push that is pick a competition and make yourself get ready for it.
Yeah.
Force yourself to do that. And you don't have to sign up or anything. Just commit to it in your mind that, okay, I'm going to do this competition, and whether I'm ready or not, I'm going to be there. And that way you give yourself an ultimatum, and you don't, you have to get ready for it. And, that's whenever, we go back to everything that we talked about before about getting ready for that moment.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think I kind of don't want to say this because you talked to me about that weightlifting competition. But for me, if it's like, if I just commit in my mind, it doesn't really hold as much weight as if other people know it. Because I don't care if I let myself down. I care if I let other people down.
Right.
So if you're like me, tell everyone you're doing it and then you have to do it,
Yeah.
even though you.
Or you got that idea of embarrassment afterwards.
Right.
And you're like, oh, how'd your meet go?
Because for me, it's
Oh,
like,
right.
if it's just in my head and I haven't told anyone, it's like, well, no one knew, so
Yeah.
it's like it never happened.
Yeah.
I never missed that competition. I never thought of signing up for it. So if you're like me, just bite the bullet, tell everyone, and have that embarrassment kind of.
Accountability
Because he's
is
doing
never
it
bad.
in March. So
I don't want to say
And
that.
now
there
you
you go.
all are witnesses to this fact.
that's on the internet forever.
I didn't even think of that part. Mm.
There you go.
Dang it.
Always scared of.
I was going to say something else, but my fear is now taking that away from me.
But talking more about when's the right time, we mentioned it before about not being super serious whenever it comes. Like, it's talking about a weightlifting meet. You're, if you don't ever compete, you're definitely not going to be an Olympic level weightlifter if you're not competing.
Yeah.
You're not going to show up and win gold with a packed weight class. It's just not going to happen if you're not getting experience on the platform. And that's one of the bringing it full circle. That's one of the values that it has of competing young in your sport, is that you're gaining experience and you're learning what it feels like to compete under that pressure. So maybe if you're not somebody that performs well under pressure, you can make yourself somebody that performs well under pressure, because now you've put yourself in those situations. You came out on top, maybe you came out on bottom. Either way, you've been there. You know what it feels like. You know what it's like. So you've done it. Now the next time you get there, let's say you did come out on bottom. Next time you get to that situation, you already know what it's like. So you're gonna be better off.
And I think it is in the long run going to be easier if you start younger in your sport, like you said, because when you're new to it, you don't expect anything.
Yeah.
If you've been doing it for 5 years and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm pretty good, now there's more pressure.
Mm-hmm.
My other point just came back to me. So how often do you think someone should do a competition? Because you do get some people who become competition junkies and are like, well, I want to do a competition every other month.
Yeah.
And whether weightlifting, or CrossFit, how long do you think you should space those out in both those sports?
Really, when it comes to competing, I think it depends on your skill level. So, like, you look at somebody so we're talking about somebody just starting out. There's nothing wrong with competing every other month, I think. If you're just starting out, you're trying to build that confidence on the platform or on the CrossFit stage, those kind of things. If you're getting up there and you're becoming pretty skillful, like say you're getting to like national level ability, maybe cut that down to a handful of times a year. That way you're able to set that goal and gear up for it. You look at somebody like, I know we talked about plenty of times, like Ilya, how he said he's only competing, or in 2015 over the last 3 years, 2015, I'm sorry, he was only going to compete twice.
Right.
And that was his goal. And he didn't compete at Worlds because he's gearing up for the Olympics.
Right.
Because that's how his training is going to handle all of that. Because, whenever you're getting up to that level and you're lifting those heavy weights, your body's only going to withstand so much. So you have to be a little bit smarter, and then game plan on that level be a lot smarter. But let's just say you're getting about national level weightlifting, or you're getting pretty comfortable, maybe having a shot at the games.
Mm-hmm.
You've gone to regionals once or twice. That's when it's probably time to cut it back a little bit and start focusing on your training and learning how to gear up for a competition and bring everything that we've talked about this whole time, bring all that together and optimize it and make it the best it can be, so that I know, okay, I got a competition in 6 months. This is everything I need to do in this 6 months so that I can win.
And I think it's a good opportunity if you're competing a lot early on, test tapers.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's huge.
Taper is one of the things that I hate writing tapers, because everybody's so different.
Yeah.
Like, and it's one of those things. If I'm not with an athlete for at least 6 months, and I haven't been writing their training for 6 months, I don't even know where to start with a taper, because everybody's different, and it is kind of splitting hairs, because it may be, say if we're talking about a weightlifting meet, it may be a 5 pound difference, but still, it's one of those things you've been working with somebody and you want to give them the best opportunity you can. So yeah, definitely great idea there is just to try out different tapers and what your body likes to do.
Yeah. So I think that's going to conclude this week's show. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube and leave a comment there, please. All under the College Lifter or Sea Lifter logo.
Tell us all about your taper.
Yeah, tell us about your taper. What else do we have going on? Anything else that I didn't mention?
Not that I can really think of right now. We're trying to get a little bit more. We want y'all to know us. We're trying to get better about doing vlogs. We're going to start trying to do some more technical stuff just to get information out to you so you know how to train better than that. I'm going to leave that up to these guys because you don't want it from me. So just stay tuned because we're trying to make it really great for y'all in 2016.
So we will see y'all next week.
See ya.